As middle-class society became aware of poor living conditions and working conditions in the slums, thousands joined groups to improve society by helping the needy. They argued that prosperous Americans should fight poverty and improve unwholesome social conditions in society. The first one we'll discuss is the temperance movement, which was an organized campaign to eliminate alcohol consumption. Frances Willard felt that saloons where men could meet to drink and gamble were a major cause of concern for cities. She became the first leader of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. The WCTU became one of the largest and most influential women's groups of the late 1800s, but the crusade against alcohol would often lead to conflict, as you will learn in later units. As cities grew, drugs, gambling, prostitution, and other forms of vice became big business. Vice was a term used for immoral or corrupt behavior. Large city populations made vice highly visible and profitable. Purity crusaders led the way in an effort to rid their communities of unwholesome and illegal activities. Purity crusaders attacked urban political machines too, and sometimes even ran for office. Next, the charity organization movement sought to make charity a scientific enterprise. The largest group of proponents for the charity organization movement was the New York Charity Organization Society, or COS. Members kept detailed files on those who received help. In this way, COS leaders could more easily determine how to serve their clients. Yet keeping detailed files also allowed COS leaders to distinguish between the poor whom they considered worthy of help and those whom they deemed unworthy. This attitude sometimes led to unkind treatment of the needy. Many COS members wanted immigrants to adopt American middle-class standards of child raising, cooking, and cleaning. They did not care how strange these customs seemed to people with different cultural backgrounds. This disturbed some immigrants, but others were grateful for the assistance. And in the 1880s and 1890s, urban churches began to provide social services for the poor who now surrounded them. They also tried to aim some reform campaigns in new directions. Instead of blaming immigrants for drinking, gambling, and other behaviors, the churches sought to treat the problems that drove people into such activities. Soon, a social reform movement developed called the Social Gospel Movement. It sought to apply the teachings of Jesus directly to society. This movement focused on the gospel ideals of charity and justice, especially by seeking labor reforms and improvements in living conditions. The settlement movement was one of the most successful social reforms of this time. Thousands of young, educated women and men put the social gospel movement into practice in this innovative reform program. These young reformers settled into a house called the Settlement House in the midst of a poor neighborhood and created a kind of community center where they offered social services. This movement had begun in Britain. Its founders believed that simply giving money to the poor never really helped them. In order to find out what would be most helpful, some young college students lived in poor neighborhoods so that they could witness the poverty firsthand. An Illinois native, Jane Addams, visited these settlement houses in Britain and brought the idea back to Chicago. She bought the run-down Charles Hull mansion, which was now part of an immigrant neighborhood. She and her friend Ellen Gates Starr repaired it and named it Hull House and opened its doors as a center of community activity. Over the decades, Hull House offered cultural events, classes, child care, playgrounds, clubs, summer camps for children, health care, and offices to help people find jobs and offer legal counsel. Hull House even launched investigations of city economic, political, and social conditions. These actions laid the foundation for many later reforms. Settlement houses like Hull House sprang up all over the country, and by 1910, there were more than 400 settlement houses in the U.S. This concludes this segment of our course. Thank you for listening.